Hello everyone. This video was going to be about the second statement in John Paul Miller's affidavit that was filed in the probate case of Mica Francis. But I've heard that John Paul is extremely upset about the court records and 911 calls being released. So in deference to his feelings, I'm not going to continue this series. Just kidding. Let's get on to our second installment of Anyone Can Lie on an Affidavit. John Paul begins Statement 2 of the affidavit with the claim that after Mica had elective surgery on December 1, 2017, the doctors told him when she woke up that she was having a psychotic episode. His proof for this is simply the bill for the surgery. No medical records stating that she had a psychotic episode. Just John Paul saying that she woke up and was instantly psychotic. We're just supposed to believe him because he's the most honest little cowpoke in the whole entire world. What kind of doctors immediately diagnose someone as having a psychotic episode after waking from surgery? I would think the doctors would assign any odd post-op behavior to the anesthesia or pain meds before deciding it was psychiatric in nature. John Boy also claims that Mica began writing undecipherable emails on December 15th of 2017. His proof for this is an email from someone who is a mystery. But we're going to need a name, so let's call this person, I don't know, how about Johnella Pauline? The email from Johnella starts with, "Okay, we really have to help Mica. I told her, before you two can work on things, she has to get well by seeing a psychiatrist." Hold up. John Paul and Mica were married on November 7th of 2017. And this was the secret wedding that happened so John Paul could stay with her after her surgery. Or maybe so he could control her after her surgery. In either case, they had only been married a little over a month. And Johnella implies that John Paul and Mica were having trouble and needed to work on things. Were they having issues that soon into their marriage? Did their honeymoon phase only last a few hours? Here's a thought. Maybe Mica didn't really want to marry John Paul. Or maybe something happened after November 7th and she was having doubts. Maybe that's why he had to come up with the whole "she's the crazy one" campaign. Her reaction to the anesthesia gave him the perfect opportunity for that. You know what's funny about this email? And I don't mean funny haha, I mean funny peculiar. Johnella Pauline wrote that they had received a text from Mica, but at the end of this text it reads, "Sent from my iPhone." That would mean it was actually an email that was sent, not a text. Did Johnella just say the wrong word? Or did John Paul mess up and send an email as a text message and forget to leave out "sent from my iPhone"? The text that John Paul claims Mica sent to Johnella is interesting too. It is filled with nonsensical rambling, but that's not the interesting part to me. The interesting part is that whoever wrote it uses all caps when emphasizing a word. You know who does that? Did you guess John Paul Miller? Well, ding, 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 we have a winner. I think this text that was sent to Johnella was originally an email that John Paul had sent to someone during an episode of some sort. Then he went in and changed the names to make it look as though it was coming from Mica. He's such a sneaky little rascal. John Paul further claims in Statement 2 that Mica was prescribed various medications over the years, but the most consistent was lithium. Of course, he just can't shut his trap about lithium. He then provided photos of medicine bottles. Did he take these photos at different times? And if so, why was he taking photos of them? Or did he keep all of her medicine bottles and take all the pics at once? I think him having photos of her medication is just a little too convenient. There is also a text between him and a doctor named Derek. Who knows if it's real, though? It does show John Paul capitalizing "a lot" for emphasis, though. John Paul claims that Mica was diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar II with severe psychosis, and dependent personality disorder. He then provides screenshots of someone's medical records on the My Health One app, But we don't know who they are because there's no name on them. Once again, we're just supposed to take the word of Mr. Honesty. The screenshots show that the patient had an onset date of 2/9/24 for acute psychosis, and then 11/29/2022 onset dates for bipolar disorder, cannabis dependence, and dependent personality disorder. Now, 2/9/24 would have been the time that Mica was involuntarily committed and was released 48 hours later because they found no reason to hold her. 11/29/22 was the time a friend or a sister took her to the hospital and John Paul tried to interfere. This was when Mica was so weak she passed out twice at the hospital, and it was reported that John Paul was refusing to let her sleep or eat. If he really thought that Mica had mental health issues, why would he try to stop her from going to the hospital? Isn't he the one who keeps claiming that he's the only person who tried to help her? Maybe he tried to interfere because he really was depriving her of sleep and food. And what's with the nicotine patches that were prescribed? As a singer, would Mica risk her voice by smoking? In 1998, John Paul's father, Reginald Wayne Miller, wrote a letter to the court regarding the custody of John Paul's oldest son, Logan Hardy. In it, Reggie writes that John Paul does not drink, never used drugs, and has stopped smoking. Well, isn't that interesting? One day we'll discuss that letter in detail. Mica called the police on 2/15/2024 and stated she thought John Paul was in a manic state and that he hadn't picked up his meds at the pharmacy. I wonder if the screenshots from My Health One were actually John Paul's records, and he conveniently used the date of 11/29/2022 as his onset date, so he could later try to say that these records were Mica's. I mean, this is the guy who seems to keep screenshots and photos for years. John Paul's other proof is an email that Mica supposedly sent on February 28, 2018, to some doctor that had written a review on bipolar medications. She starts the email with, "My name is Mica Miller. I am from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina." Was it necessary for her to start with who she is and where she's from? Or was that put in there by someone else to make sure everyone knew that Mica wrote it? The email continues with Mica's history of being in the hospital and placed on 300 milligrams of lithium and stating that she'd been on 600 before that, but her body wasn't metabolizing it correctly, so it was dropped to 300 milligrams. If her body wasn't metabolizing lithium, why wouldn't the doctors put her on a different medication? I don't know that I'd ever trust a doctor who wasn't worried about their patient not metabolizing lithium correctly. Part of the email reads, "Lately I am so depressed." Who else uses the word so? Yep, it is John Boy again. He even used it in the obituary he wrote for Mica, which wasn't at all bizarre. There's also the word anything capitalized for emphasis in that email. Oh, Jonifer. Once again, I'm left to believe that Mica was not the mentally ill one in the marriage. I'll be back with more affidavit analysis soon.